do you kind of separate AI applications that create real world, genuine value from those that are just kind of impressive demos? You see a lot of demos these days. So when you're evaluating potential AI initiatives, do you have like a mental framework, that you use to distinguish between a truly genuine opportunity and an expensive experimentation at that?
That's a very common question. That's trending really, Devaang, and everybody wants to know that. I think I've interacted with product leaders, I've interacted with engineers, executives.
Yeah.
So what I typically do is and have some kind of a mental framework when I want to separate the real value versus what is the hype, right? I follow this 5 best practices, which I would like to share. What I do typically is when I start anything, I start with the business outcome and not the technology first. But that mindset is very important, that every AI initiative must be anchored to a very crystal clear business goal. What I mean by that, examples could be reducing customer churn by 15% or cutting the processing time by 60%. So those are some of the real values that should be defined the real business outcome, right? The second, one of the principles I follow is to quantify the AI value across like different dimensions, right? Across 5 dimensions. One is I can think of is more financial, which is very important to every company. So there should be a direct correlation and impact to a revenue or a cost. So that is one thing that is important. Operationally, we need to align achieving gains in efficiency and then reducing the errors. The third one is more strategic in nature, which is where you got to have your business have some kind of a competitive advantage. The fourth one is more risk mitigation, where you're able to detect compliance errors, or you can mitigate fraudulent detections of data, right? Innovation, of course, is part of everything we do. So new products and services is something you have to constantly research and try to do pilot and implement. For example, in a recent AI innovation project, we measured just not the cost savings, but also the reduction in processing errors. So that was the one thing we did while implementing the AI. The other one is I would employ a very rigorous and phased evaluation. What I mean by that is I need to phase out my pilots with a very clear success criteria with an outcome defined from the business. And then I would go through a proof of concept phase, and then I would talk about how do I scale. Once I get it accurate enough, the model is working and scalable, then I would talk about how do I scale across within the team or across teams in the enterprise. And then need to have some kind of a KPI for every phase you define. That is another thing is very important. The fourth one is about having an impact, just not with the model, the ML models, but also the users adapting. For example, I'll tell you one thing. Uber, they found a very highly accurate AI model. They defined it that if they can integrate into the driver workflow, that is what their success criteria meant. So that was a successful implementation that Uber did, as an example, right? The final thing is about having that governance, a lean governance process, and also some kind of integration. So the real value comes in when AI is integrated across core business systems, as you know, right? With the monitoring and governance, those are very important criteria to differentiate between a hype versus the real AI value.
I love it the way you put it. It's a very measured strategy where you have KPIs that are kind of constantly tracking real world progress, while you have a governance framework that keeps things in check. So it's kind of like a well regulated strategy that has guardrails everywhere, and you're constantly on top of it, seeing how things are progressing and starting small and kind of scaling it from the ground up.
Absolutely, I think you put it in a nice way. Yes, absolutely, those are important criteria.